a comedian named Jimmy Carr is getting flamed right now because he made a joke at the expense of an audience member who happened to be deaf. He called this woman up on stage and noticed that she had a hearing aid, and he started making jokes that she, after transcribing it on her phone, she found them very offensive to her deaf community. So this says that this woman was left absolutely insulted by making the punchline of his joke. She said, her name is Carly Allen, and she has gone to the press about this. She said, she was picked out of the front row by Jimmy Carr. She was wearing a beret, and he was asking her why she was wearing a beret. Quote, I used my right hand to lift my beret, exposing my hearing aid. I hoped he was at least a decent guy and would move on, knowing I was deaf. It didn't work. It had the opposite effect, as I was like a sitting deaf duck now. And she said she was using a transcribing app on her phone to read what Jimmy Carr was saying during the set. And he addressed her again, asking if she was going to, quote, call for backup from the French resistance, because she was wearing a beret. And then he was talking about how you can say anything about deaf people because they can't hear you. I was shocked. This isn't comedy. Comedy is an amazing tool for progressive change. Yet Jimmy decided to use his platform to put down those who have a tough life. There's a joke, and then there's absolutely insulting. It's vile to the deaf community. It's just not acceptable. He doesn't need to do that. He's rich enough. I've spent far too long feeling miserable and ashamed of my hearing loss because of the stigma attached to it. She said, basically, you know, she didn't realize until after the fact, but she was highly offended that she was the butt of his jokes.
There should be some type of like screening process to get in. You should be forced to be roasted openly if you want to get into a comedy club.
Well, I mean, comedians do have a habit of heckling their audience, roasting their audience, and it's a two-way street.
Comedy clubs should hire journeyman comedians to roast every single person that comes in there. And anyone that can't take the joke, you're out. You can't do it. The whole, like, if you're going to, I'm not saying you don't have a right to be offended. I'm saying that you shouldn't be offended if you choose to go to these things in person, especially if you know who the person is beforehand.
Yeah, I don't know if she was exactly a fan of his, but if she is a fan of Jimmy Carr, she should know that he has a track record for making off-color jokes.
Stigma? What the hell is the stigma?
You know what? That let me stump too.
Well, as someone who is half deaf, can you explain to us how you're stigmatized?
I have no clue. Okay, so like, so I guess I can be half offended about all of this. Like, the only things that I've ever noticed for me is that, like, okay, so if I'm in like a room of people, right? People on here might even notice as well. Like, I'll either talk too loud or too quiet for the room because I can't hear it adequately. That will happen to me. And I say what a lot to people. I say what until they're sick of repeating themselves, whatever. I don't know what the stigma is. I'm not wholly deaf, so I don't know what this is for. All I know is that as a participating member of society, it is your job to make the decision beforehand whether you can handle being in an environment like this. Okay? And the part about comedy being a tool of progressive change is vomit inducing. Vomit inducing.
Why would you go to a comedy club if you think that the purpose of comedy is promoting progressive-ism?
Yes.
Like, not to make people laugh. Also, Bender the Offender sent $20. People who get offended by a comedian are softer than snowflakes in the middle of winter.
So, I did see somebody mention Def Comedy Jam.
But this is what I mean about, like, just rampant progressivism not being the same. So, okay, so story. Comedian offends people, person is offended, makes statement, done. Right? In the past, I feel it would have been like, comedian makes a statement, person is offended, person is now exalted, and comedian's life ruined, and join in on the bashing. Like, that later part, those later two parts, they're completely removed from the equation anymore. Like, who like, what cancellation has stuck?
I mean, they
in the last
recently
while.
tried to cancel Ricky Gervais because he was making jokes about kids with terminal cancer.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, he like made a joke where he called a hypothetical like non-existent child with cancer Baldy, and there were some parents of kids with cancer or kids that passed away from cancer who were, you know, really deeply offended by it. And yeah, I understand their perspective and all that, but, you know, don't expose yourself to that type of material if you know that that's a sensitive subject for you. And also, don't police what he's allowed to joke about, you know?
When exactly does it stop becoming a joke and become vile? I want to know. I want to know the actual line. Is there like a specific word? Is it a specific set of words? What is the criteria that makes something no longer a joke? Nothing. It's how you perceive it, and he is not responsible for how you perceive the humor that he's giving.
I think that it's fine to acknowledge that life can be tougher for some people based on their attributes. Like, obviously, you know, if you're deaf, there are parts of your life, many parts of your life, that are much more difficult than the rest of the population. That's fine. But that's not because, I mean, I wouldn't say that's because people hate you because you're deaf, you know? It's because you just naturally, you know, don't have an ability that the rest of society has. And that's tough. But what you do have is the ability to laugh at yourself, just like everybody else.
I think I've told the story multiple times about like the time that I went to the grocery store and like a lady asked me to get something off a high shelf, and it was like the greatest day of my life. I was like, let's go. I'm 5'5", okay? That's a once in a lifetime opportunity when somebody asks you to get something off a high shelf, right? Okay, so I do this. It's like I was about to send a text to someone.
You felt seen, heard, validated.
I was like, bro, you're not gonna believe what just happened.
No
right?
one believed
Okay,
you.
2 aisles down, I look at something and he goes, do you need help getting that off the top shelf? And it was like instantly somebody decided karma, the universe goes, not so fast, boy.
Like, imagine if Jimmy Carr pulled you up on stage and started making jokes about how short you are.
It would be fine. It would be
Like,
hilarious.
You would just take it in stride. I don't know what
The chat every day takes the opportunity to roast me. Now, I'm not saying they do it well. You know, that's up for debate.
Yeah.
But the point is, you have to be a good sport about it. That's part of the job. It's not even part of the job for this. It's part of being a human being in a world that doesn't protect and coddle you at every step of the way.
My favorite bread troll is the Happy Wednesday bread. When it's like Monday,
Yes.
I just don't. I don't get it.
They do well. They do like to gaslight me. That is their favorite thing. to
Make
do.
Brett question his sense of reality.
Oh, that happens all the time, anyways. That's a constant in my life.
Also, because this article is trying to drag Jimmy Carr, they brought up his other controversies. So let's talk about those. In 2019, while filming another show, Jimmy Carr was slammed for making jokes about fat women and about female genital mutilation. In 2022, he again said what was deemed offensive. There were comments about the Gypsy, Roma, and Traveler community. And he also made previous jokes about deafness, telling an audience in 2018 that he received complaints for, quote, saying, deafness is getting to be quite a problem for me. I never thought I'd hear myself say that. So unless this lady had never heard of Jimmy Carr before in her life, she ought to be somewhat aware that, you know, he makes edgy jokes, and if you're sitting in the front row, you might be involved in them.
Yep. Somebody in the chat said height jokes and jokes about kids with cancer are not the same thing. Humor is humor.
Can I interject? Like, I think this is the first time I've like talked about this, but I had like my own like recent stint with cancer, and you know, the being treated like a wounded puppy feels worse than the having like some people making a joke about it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess different people have like different sensibilities, but
The point is that within the world, it's you have the opportunity to either not listen, not watch, not, you know, take in the entertainment. You don't have a right to tell somebody else what they can and cannot say within the laws of free speech, right?
And
It's within your power or my power, if those jokes offend you, to just not look at it and not watch it. All you're going to do by telling somebody they can't make jokes like that is make them want to make them more. Or even if they bend the knee and kind of acquiesce, they're not going to do it in good faith. They're doing it because you've shamed them into doing so. That doesn't get rid of this type of humor.
And I feel like there's a subsect of humanity that doesn't comprehend that humor, in a way, is. So it serves a purpose of like instant release, but it also serves a purpose of like normalization. Yeah. So the fact that something is like being brought up, it's being like called into attention and heightened to its like positive or negative qualities. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I just don't understand how the crowd that's always talking about representation doesn't understand that it's flattering in an unflattering way.
Wouldn't you want to be seen as just like everybody else? If the idea is inclusion, wouldn't you want to be considered just as viable to be made fun of as the other people in the show, if being made fun of at these shows is considered what is normal? They always talk about normalization, right? Yeah. You're integrating that into the humor.
I looked at a photo of this woman. She looks a little bit cray. Like, she looks a little bit...
Is that the stigma?
She looks a little bit unhinged, okay? Like, if I saw this the photo out of context of this woman, I would think she's a little bit crazy. So I wouldn't let this woman, paint your opinion of all of the deaf community, and I wouldn't let her speak for the entire deaf community, because she's obviously, a bit of a clown. And she has beclowned herself and tried to drag up this whole community with her, and they're not involved.
I mean, if anything that we've learned since 2016 is that if you can break the current state of society towards the humorless and those that can at least comprehend humor, because I feel that in a way, and I'm truly not saying this to be, I don't know, like I mean this quite literally. I feel like there's a subsect of the population that does not grasp that it's comedy, does not understand the root of the joke, does not understand the purpose of the joke, and does not see the purpose of it. And so they cling to like, oh, that hurt, like to being offended.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't want to live in a world with no humor. And I especially don't want to live in a world where humor is dictated by whoever has the most politically correct take on something. That's just not... I
mean, for the Ricky Gervais situation, I feel like the linchpin of that was trying to pressure Netflix to take down his special, which is out of line. If you're just a parent of a kid who was diagnosed with cancer or maybe passed away from cancer, like, that's incredibly sad. And if you say that you're offended by that, like, that's fine. I mean, no one asked, but also that's fine if you want to say that. But don't try to literally take someone's livelihood away.
And Brett, to your point, that so I don't want to live in a humorless world either. And so I think something that's also happening is that not only is it humorless in the points where they want to interject humor, it's things that aren't funny. So for example, like the John Cena situation where he's like walking naked, I feel like that was meant to be perceived as humorous, and if you're there physically,
it probably is.
It's probably funny. It's like, oh my god,
it's the fact naked. That it's the costume award, right? That's the
right,
and then it goes to the costume change. Yeah, you're right.
But it's less impactful. So if you're there physically, I feel like it's impactful because like he's literally naked. But in the digital media where everything's like this. I don't know how to say this word.
Well, we feel like we've already seen John Cena naked, so like
maybe, yeah, like he's always shirtless. But also, like there's the different planes. It's a flat image, so it just doesn't have the impact of like person in a whole room with people that are clothed naked. You know what I mean?
I think it's just like we're allowed to make fun of John Cena because he's straight, cis, white male, and he's strong and masculine, and those are the things that in our like Marxist system we vilify those things.
Yeah. More than a few of my friends, the root of many of our jokes have to do with dead parents. We share that in common. I have a couple of memes that I send to people, right off the bat to gauge, where they like. One of my favorites is the picture of Stalin. It says dark humor is like food. Not everybody gets it. And that's the type of thing that you can send to someone. And then the stuff that I send people, the stuff me and Dane send each other is fucked up. And that's where my humor lies. And I have no problem with that in all respects. And it can be vile and it can be unbelievably uncalled for. The amount of 9/11 memes that I send to people, which are essentially making fun of the death of thousands of people, probably would give some people pause, but that is my sense of humor, and I've got my own stuff going on in life right now.
And sometimes it's dead parents in 9/11 memes.
Okay, and all I'm saying is that the ability to distinguish the difference between a joke about something tragic and individual experiences with those in which this happened. So, for instance, I send memes like that all the time. Well, I also just watched this episode from the show Third Watch that took place. It's a show about these cops and EMS workers in New York City, and the third season started right after 9/11. And they did this unbelievably impactful episode where they're not just playing their characters, they're also talking to themselves, and they're talking to real first responders and people who were there at ground zero, right? I can watch that, feel all sorts of actual emotions towards what I'm watching, empathy, sympathy, horror, and still make those jokes because there is a time, a place, and a tone for everything. Mm-hmm. The human brain is far more complicated and can dissect and take in way more information and distinguish between things far more efficiently than people give it credit for.
Yeah, I think they just think people are too stupid to differentiate tone and time and place.
I think that may be you like giving them like almost even a courtesy. Like I truly believe it's like they don't even comprehend humor.
Oh, they don't have they're so humorless they don't even get it.
Yeah.
They lack a theory of mind for anyone they disagree with. They don't think anyone they disagree with has an inner life or any reasons for why they think the things they do or feel the way they feel.
It's like those studies that always parroted that like a right winger can perfectly
predict the views of a
not even predict but describe the views of a left winger in a non-cartoonish way, and then the left winger can't even begin to create the phrase. And so
they just hate. They're just hateful. They were just born that way.
Yeah,
and they're irredeemable. They're basically racism. Not people.
Basically.
Yeah.
And so humor is guttural. Like you can fake a laugh, but fake laughter can be identified as like, oh, you kind of pushed it. You know what I mean? It wasn't genuine. Whereas a real laugh is like, it's organic, you feel it, it has a sound, it has a tone, it has a feeling that reverberates within the crowd. And I feel like they're so humorless that they're used to the fake laughs. Oh yeah. So I mean,
that's like all of the laughs at Dylan Mulvaney's comedy set and all of the laughs at like Hannah Gadsby's Netflix special. Yeah.
The Hannah Gadsby one was really really something.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.